one of my two outpost groups is with the college students at my church here.
Mm-hmm.
So in this group, we've been going through the STRU courses and are in the middle of evaluating worldviews with Robbie and talking about the Christian theism worldview.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, that holds that people are specially created, usually understood as being made in the image of God.
Right.
So, and that's usually understood to mean that we're personal beings like God, and therefore we have the ability to reason, including not just reason, but I guess the classical definition of personal involves intellect, will, and emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the students was pushing back on that idea of intelligence being part of the image of God, and that whether that can even be found in Scripture and supported from Scripture, mainly because his concern was that that definition might exclude people who have intellectual disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he also said that one of our college professors here also holds that view, that the image of God is not necessarily about having intelligence or intellect, but it's more about whether we're reflecting Christ-likeness. So my question really is, what is the image of God as it's described in Scripture, and is there support for this ability to reason as being part of our likeness with God?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a very important question, and there's actually some debate on this. In fact, I was at San Antonio a week and a half ago, or this time last week, for ETS, Evangelical Theological Society Conference, and there was a discussion with some very notable individuals, William Lane Craig, Josh Swamidas, Fuz Rana, and some others, about the historical Adam. And they all held that the image of God in man was a feature of true human beings, and yet there was some debate of exactly what that entailed. Different people have different ideas. And there's no place in the Bible that I know of that explicitly says what the image of God in man is. I think we can do some work inductively to learn as we go into the text and look. That helps us to understand what's entailed there. Because the image of God in man is a unique quality. No other creature has that, as far as we know. Certainly none in the animal kingdom. I mean, there might be a question of whether angels have the image of God or not, in the sense that we're talking about it. What we do know fairly clearly is in chapter 9, verse 6 of Genesis, and Genesis 1 says that in the image of God, God created man, and he's speaking of men and women there collectively. But in Genesis 9:6 it says, if man sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for in the image of God, God created man. And what this tells us minimally is that the image of God is the feature of human beings that informs our moral obligations towards each other, all right? Such if you destroy an image bearer, then you as an image bearer need to be destroyed, and that's the appropriate punishment. So destroying an image bearer is a big deal, and there you see that moral issue being played out there in that command, which legitimizes capital punishment. And the capital punishment is a punishment that you see in the Mosaic Law for more than just murder. But we learn from Genesis 9:6 that there is a moral element and a moral responsibility that human beings who are made the image of God have. Okay, that's pretty clear from that passage. I think that the other way that we can go is we look at the kinds of things that seem to be unique about human beings and are also characteristics of God. And that seems like an inductive way of trying to populate the list of what are the features of the image of God in man. Certainly a moral nature. That would be absolute. It's very clear to me from the Genesis 9 passage, and just reflecting human beings are unique in having a genuine moral nature, not other creatures, but human beings. Okay, and so then the question becomes, what else, in what other ways does it seem that human beings are uniquely like God? And oftentimes it was a rational nature is put in there. Right? Maybe that's what's being referred to when somebody says intellect. Intellect, will, and emotion, though, are not sufficient reasons to identify the image of God, because animals seem to have will and emotions. They make decisions. They're not mechanical. They're not machines. And they also seem to display emotions. We can watch animals, especially pets, we see where they seem to be pacified, and other times they seem to be angry. So emotion isn't, it may be a necessary part, but it's not a sufficient way of identifying the image of God in man. Intellect, it depends on what you mean by that. There does seem to be a high level of rational capability in which we can think in terms of symbolism. We can reflect on the nature of time. We can talk. There's a number of different things that seem to be very unique. Animals have thoughts, but animals don't seem to have thoughts about their thoughts. Okay, so there's a reflective element there. And so I think it becomes then justified to kind of add that to the list. But notice this is all inductive. That is, we're looking at the text, and in most cases, except for the moral one that I just mentioned from Genesis 9, we're trying to seize on those things that seem to be like God, but also part like human at the same time, and not like anything else. And so that's the best way we can do that, figure out what the image of God is just do our best at making an inductive assessment. I personally wouldn't be comfortable with intellect, will, and emotion, because it's clear that other creatures, sentient creatures, who are not made the image of God, have emotion and exercise acts of will, even if on a very simple level. And but the intellect, the kind of unique, set-apart intellect that humans have, and that some people call it a rational nature, and it makes us capable of introspection and things like that. I think that would be also a characteristic. To me, the key is not that we can itemize all the features. The key is that having the image of God is something all humans have, and it's what makes them valuable and makes them morally obliged to each other. So that,
don't you think it also has the characteristic of giving us the ability to relate to God? Being personal
yes.
beings, being made in His image, means that somehow we can connect with Him in a way that other creatures can't.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right on that. I do write about that in the Story of Reality, but I forgot to mention it. Yeah, it allows us to have an intimacy or relationship or a friendship with God that other creatures can't have. And by the way, this is fairly easy to understand. We can have relationships with our pets, but it's totally different than our relationship with our children and with our spouses, right? It's a magnitude. It's not just a magnitude. It's not a quantity difference. It's a quality difference. It's an entirely different sort of thing. And so I think that would be a fair way of characterizing the image of God. And one other thing, keep in mind that many things that are part of functioning human beings are capacities that we carry in our souls, so to speak, that bear the image of God. And these capacities may be functional and may not be functional. So we have the capacity for a certain kind of rational activity. But a newborn child doesn't have that capacity realized. There has to be a development of the brain and other parts of the body for these characteristics of the soul to be expressed through. They're there. They are capacities that are innate to humans, but the capacities, and sometimes because of injury or shortcoming or whatever, of the physical body can't get expressed through the physical body. And that's why you can
like in the case of people who have had traumatic brain injuries, or
yes.
who are undergoing dementia,
that's right,
or have some other intellectual disability that maybe is affecting their ability to connect with the outside world.
Correct. And keep in mind, the image of God is something that is innate and intrinsic to being human. Humans are qua human, in the capacity of being human, also in the image of God. So it's built into the warp and woof of our humanity. It's not a quality that's added on that can be then taken away. And this entails that humans manifest a variety of different capacities, or they have native to them capacities that may not always be expressed for some reason. But as humans, there is still this native capacity. So they retain their value because they're made in the image of God, which entails a lot of these capacities, even if the capacities are not realized, actualized yet for whatever reason. They haven't grown enough, they're not old enough, or maybe they're injured, or maybe they're too old. And so these capacities, because of degradation of the brain doesn't serve to be capable of expressing these capacities like they used to. But they're still human beings made in the image of God and valuable as such.